The disrespect is real, but maybe it's a blessing for Deshaun Foster and company.
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to this edition of the Locked On UCLA podcast. I'm your host, Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer. Thanks for making this your first listen each and every day. It's free wherever you get your podcast, and it's available on YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe. Thanks for your support. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel, which from now until September 22nd, FanDuel customers, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. All right, where we get started today is the disrespect dished out towards UCLA's football team. Continually, it's continuing to happen. And I'm not going to come out here and say they're going to make the college football playoff. They're going to win the Big Ten. I'm not that stupid. I'm not going to try and pull it on you. But I think we should all be a little frustrated at the lack of love given to our UCLA Bruins. Yet you're going to poke and prod at the people in the Rose Bowl. You're going to do all these things, but a lot of it had to do with the layover from COVID, right? With the fans coming back slowly. The true despise from the UCLA fan base to Chip Kelly, everything. And just, all right, trying to compete with the overall product in Southern California. But you got a UCLA team that I think has some hope this year. Hope, what does that mean? Hope to surprise, hope to grow. And why am I speaking like this? I was looking at a CBS Sports, prediction, right? This is already on top of the preseason polls that has UCLA 15th out of 18 teams. Okay, that's put on by Cleveland.com. They do their best job. They do due diligence. Big Ten does not have any preseason media polls. It does not happen. Okay, but Cleveland.com has UCLA as a 15th best team in an 18-team conference. Tough to predict. I disagree. Then CBS Sports did who's the most overrated teams, who's the most underrated. Of course, USC fits on both of those things. Where did UCLA fly, right? UCLA got predicted in the 15th spot, 16th spot, 17th spot, 18, 16, 17. So you're telling me this team, where even with the concerns are about the coaching and the quick turnover, which has, mind you, a lot of NFL experience, quite an experience of playing college football, is going to be the worst team in the Big Ten? The worst team? I just have a tough time seeing that they're just going to go winless, as some projections have them as bad as they could be in the Big Ten. I optimistically see the best case scenario, an 8-win ceiling. Some see the best case being a 7-win ceiling in season and everything. I'm just stunned. It's not that UCLA is going to immediately compete with the Ohio States, Michigans. Oregon's already getting looped in there in that discussion. But let's remember this team that has a very experienced offensive coordinator. Deshaun Foster was talking with some NFL brethren, I think it was with the NFL Legacy or whatever it was specifically called, and he wanted to make sure he went out and got an experienced offensive coordinator who didn't have to babysit, which also was probably pushed on him, but whatever it may be, they went out and got Eric Bieniemy, and it made a lot of sense. A veteran coordinator with a lot of players returning on offense that can certainly go and score points, which is the hope that they just don't repeat last year's dismal performance under an offensive head coach, which Chip Kelly was. Now, the defense is obviously one of the main concerns. How can UCLA turn over last year's super one-season success and continue that for years to come? What was Danton Lynn now turning into Ikaika Malloy, who does not have the same talent to play with in terms of pass rushing. They have interior defensive linemen. They're trying to figure out the edge rushing. How can they piece together a defense that can look more like last year's team on defense than it does in 22 or 21 or 20, right? The team that gave up a lot of points. Big Ten isn't necessarily known for its flashy offensive display, but the Bruins are still going to have their struggles in offense, and I wonder, where is it all going to play out? For the Bruins, come on, they got Indiana and Minnesota at home, at Hawaii, and then you've got the battle of playing Fresno State, who might be a sneaky contender in the Mountain West this season, one of those conferences truly in a competition for the Group of 5 playoff berth, right? That is what it's going on. And then you look at the rest of the schedule. Can UCLA steal one of those games on the road against Nebraska? Large in part, the big one being with Washington, where that's a big unknown with Jed Fish turning over a complete roster. Rutgers are they good? Are they beatable? It's tough. That's one of those games you'd love UCLA to win. I'm not sure if they can win that Rutgers game. And then Iowa at home on a Friday night. It might be invaded by Iowa fans, but I think UCLA has the offense that Iowa has not had in like 30 years. Okay. They just haven't. They had a UCLA offense like this. If Iowa had that, they would be in the college football playoff more consistently over the last decade. I'm just beside myself how people can realistically pick this team to finish in last place. And let's look at I'm looking at this predicted order finish in the Big Ten. They've got, let's tell you, Northwestern anywhere from close to middle of the pack to last place. This is a team that 2 seasons ago had 1 win. Last year surprised everybody, had 8 wins. Michigan State that's having some turnover. Purdue. Minnesota lost their quarterback to Rutgers. Illinois is trying to put things together. And then there's just so many question marks. You don't know where Washington's going to be. Indiana with a new coach, although Indiana's getting some love towards the middle part of the conference. I think UCLA is closer to the middle of the pack than being bunched up in the back. And I think one of the wisest things I've read is about the Big Ten. The top 4 teams, maybe 5, will truly separate themselves, which is not a rough statement. It's just how far will teams 6 through 18, teams 6 through 17 be separated, right? Is it they're all pretty even? Was it a home game versus a road game, a bad botched call in a certain game against either a big team or whatever that changes the standings by a game? If you're telling me these teams are all going to be bunched together so close that one game makes a difference, I live with that. But the way it's being framed is that UCLA has no idea what's going to hit them. This was a wasted move, all for the dollars, and it's going to be terrible. A veteran quarterback, returning receivers, running backs, one of the deepest receiving groups in the conference, let alone possibly around the country in the Power 4, whatever it may be, a solid tight end. And if the offensive line can hold up, then UCLA will score points. They might look a little slow trying to figure out the Bieniemy offense, but he will make sure that it works. If they can get any protection, UCLA will score points. Maybe not 50 a game, 40, something ridiculous, but much better than what they did last year and much better than what the Big Ten is used to seeing. And why are we shocked? Because Washington State would go out and beat Wisconsin, right? Why are we stunned that these Pac-12 West Coast offenses in the early non-conference, when depth wasn't tested, they sometimes would go out and beat the Big Ten teams in Camp Randall or whatever it might be, right? Why are we surprised? I think UCLA is not the worst team. The disrespect is real, and they should use it as a chip on their shoulder, and it can be a blessing because they'll fly under the radar. And how many of those games are they going to go into and steal a couple when they're not expected to win? Now, if they can steal that gauntlet between Oregon, LSU, and Penn State, that would be something. But I'm just talking about legitimately, where can they steal a game like Rutgers on the road? Nebraska's going to theoretically have a lot to play for this year, but a true freshman quarterback and a team that struggled in one-score games last year, is that a game UCLA could steal where a true freshman quarterback, yes, UCLA knows a lot about true freshman quarterback struggles from last year. Can they steal a victory like that? Or Minnesota, who's supposed to be better than UCLA. I don't see it because they lost their quarterback. They're going through things. Their coach wanted to come to UCLA. Indiana, they're talking about their new head coach hasn't had a losing record. Well, sometimes you got to have a losing record one year. But, there's so many new moving parts for UCLA to get grouped immediately at the bottom from the CBS Sports model, Cleveland.com, whatever the preseason polls, immediately at the bottom with so much returning. I disagree. I disagree, and it should be a blessing in disguise. All right? Not necessarily a blessing in disguise, but Tyler Bilodeau, what does he bring to UCLA? Let's talk about more of one of the key UCLA transfers who could arguably be the best newcomer, the best transfer And I've already said Kobe Johnson's supposed to be that. What does Bilodeau bring to the table? Talk about that next. It's coming down to the end of summer. Maybe some schools are back in session. But with the sandals, sunscreen, snacks for the kids, you know what all those things have in common? You're probably buying a ton again during the summer. And, think about it, probably buying a ton for back to school stuff as well. Don't stress about the cost because all you got to do is use Ibotta to get cash back on all of your purchases when you stack up on your summer essentials, and heck, even more probably with the likes of back to school needs. It's a free app that lets you earn cash back every time you shop. Hundreds of items from groceries to end of summer beach trips, even toys. You can beat inflation no matter what you're purchasing. Right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 for just trying Ibotta using the code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE when you register. Go to the App Store, Google Play Store, download the free app, and start using and earning cash back with the code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. It's IBOTTA, Ibotta, in the App Store, and use the code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. All right, we're talking second segment. Before we flip the switch to UCLA basketball, I also wanted to note one thing. I forgot to bring it up for a segment. I'd spent the last UCLA show doing a very, very, very brief Hawaii football introduction, right? Very brief. They're supposed to play Delaware State. They're UCLA's week 1 opponent. Hawaii is gearing up for week 0. But their week 0 opponent, Delaware State, missed their 10.5-hour flights. So I wonder if that game's going to be in jeopardy. Yes, Delaware State, the FCS opponent flying across the country to play Hawaii, had I think a bus issue, and they missed their flights to get to Hawaii. They missed their flights, and now they got to figure out something else, all right? I don't know at the moment what's going to happen, but Delaware State, they're trying to work on a plan. So it's funny, you wonder, Hawaii might not even have a week 0 game. Probably going to happen, but that is something to keep an eye on, the status of Hawaii's first game prior to them playing UCLA in UCLA's first game, the Deshaun Foster era, one of many games that features a lot of travel miles for the Bruins this year. So keep an eye on that. Hawaii, their opponent has not yet left. And that's a big thing considering they're traveling from Delaware to Honolulu, right, to go play the Bows. All right, now let's move on to segment 2. What are we talking about with Tyler Bilodeau? This is a guy who comes in and can create a lot of havoc for UCLA, right? This is somebody who can come in and score a lot of points. At Oregon State, let's remember, 14-point per game score. This is one of those guys with 2 years of eligibility, which makes this transfer class that much more stacked, right? If Mick Cronin can keep all these guys an extra 1 to 2 years, this team will be lethal. The amount of guys coming back that have the chance to come back, even if they lose 1 or 2 in the portal, this team will be super, super good in 24-25 and theoretically 25-26, which makes the Kennewick, Washington native, former Beaver, Tyler Bilodeau, one of the steals for UCLA, 3-star product coming out of high school, 4-star transfer product, rated, I think, a little just behind Kobe Johnson. But those are one of the 2 guys that are probably going to go start this year for UCLA. Bilodeau slotted in as the 4. Some projection models have them as the starting 5. I would expect Kyle to be the starting 5, William Kyle III, Summit League Defensive Player of the Year. But the reason why Bilodeau is so great, started every single one of Oregon State's game last year, over 53% from the floor. He's supposed to come in and help UCLA's ability to finish in the paint, where they are one of the worst teams at finishing the paint, can shoot from the perimeter, can go from 14 points per game, can also be one of the best rebounders on the team. Last year was the second best rebounder on the Oregon State team and was so close to being the best sophomore in Oregon State history. All right. And Oregon State does not have an illustrious basketball history. And prior to this one and done age, you had a lot of players sticking around for first, second, third years, fourth years. He's a guy that had in his sophomore campaign was about to break the Oregon State top 10 scoring. He's going to be in the top 10 for the best scorers in Oregon State history as a youngster. 20 points against Utah, hit 5 threes. So his ability to get into the paint, hit threes, get some double-doubles, which he recorded against UCLA in December of 23. He just is a double-figure machine and can get 6 to 7 boards. Kind of what UCLA wanted out of Stefanovic in the 3, even though he's getting pushed maybe out of position. That's what Bilodeau, maybe on a more consistent basis and a bigger body, can play in the post, can play a small ball 5. I expect a little more of that from Daly Jr. You would see Mara and Kyle would operate the 5, but Bilodeau flexible from the 4 to the 5. UCLA, not a lot of power forward production last year, with the minutes going to an oft-injured Bereke Buchengel, who also came to this team late. They just couldn't find that right option. Maybe Brandon Williams they tried last year. This year, they've got a proven starter. He's played in every single one of the games Oregon State's played. So 2 years, 64 games played, a total of 45 starts. So a veteran that has shot better than 45, 46% from the floor, 53% from the floor. So the efficiency is there. The ability to put up points in a hurry is there in a variety of ways. And he's physical, can defend, get rebounds, everything that is a tough-nosed Mick Cronin recruit. It fits everything Cronin wants. And he's already proven, because he's got to go ball out. At Oregon State, he had to go ball out and get big-time wins like they did last year against Arizona. This is a guy that's going to fit the UCLA model well. And where Mick Cronin was looking for scoring, I talked about Dominic Harris in the last UCLA podcast, Locked On UCLA podcast. Scoring. And not that Harris can't do it all, but Bilodeau is going to come in, immediately start, and he can do it all. He's not going to be the defensive player of the year. He's not a Kobe Johnson, but his scoring, more diversified than Johnson, more consistent from 3. Let's take a look at some numbers from Bilodeau in this most recent season. Last year, from 3, 34%. All right. And down the stretch for Bilodeau, hit threes in 6 consecutive games, all with 33% or better, including 2 of 3 at Oregon, 5 of 7 against Utah, hit 1 against UCLA in the Pac-12 tournament game, hit 1 against Colorado, all while scoring 26 points against Oregon on the road, 20 against Utah, 14 against Colorado. And against UCLA, all he did was go 6 of 8, scoring 13 points in a low-scoring game against the Beavers in 25 minutes while registering a start. Okay? That's what he can do. And he shoots free throws at a high clip, got there 109 times to the charity stripe, about 80%. That's all you can ask. Make your free throws so you can keep on the floor at the end of games. Get some rebounds so he's not a liability for a UCLA team that, despite some athleticism and some size, Bono wasn't exactly the best rebounder. Mara's not the most agile. They had to rely on Stefanovic or their guards to rebound. And that is why a guy who's 6'9", 6'10", power forward can come in, get the rebounds. He is helping hide the UCLA weaknesses and just eradicate them from last year's team and bringing them to a strength for this year's team. Now, the question is he good enough that he might test the waters after this year? Or can he stay for 2 years and UCLA could have what could be a dream 1 to 2 year window? Now, there's windows of, okay, they can win any year. But UConn has had a dream 1 to 2 year window with some talent, the Klingons and everything, right? Now, UCLA with this talent, this transfer class, don't worry that they're top 20 ranked. This is a team that with Bilodeau filling at the 4, a big hole on last year's roster that is going to be filled by someone who can start. And there's depth on this roster that can, when he sits, produce even when he's not on the court. If he's only playing 25, if he's playing 33, and the plus minus with him on the floor for any of these spots, for crying out loud, should not be ridiculous. But he is somebody who can produce. And I wonder, can he challenge to be that top 1 or 2 guy on the floor at any given time? Between Dylan Andrews, the battle of also, Dominic Harris comes in and scores, Sky Clark, Kobe Johnson, he's going to be elite defensively. You just start naming guys like that guy. Where are they going to play? They can have, with this roster, which currently has, I believe, 14 scholarship guys. One of them is an NIL boosted scholarship. So 14. You bring in your preferred walk-on. You could have 3 sets of 5s going on, right? You could play game to 5, boot a team off in practice, play another 5, boot a team off, And then next thing you know, the team who wins could change over and over and over again with what the talent has. And Bilodeau is one of the key guys. Key guys. They're all really good. Even if Cronin got 1 to 2 or less of these guys in the portal, Bilodeau is at the top of the list on the short list of 1 to 2. That was a must get and will be a must see produce type of guy for UCLA in year 1 in a Bruin uniform. It'll be fun to see. Just like it will be fun to see Gabby Jaquez currently balling it out with Team Mexico and UCLA women's basketball in the non-conference home schedule. We'll talk about it next on Locked On UCLA. All right. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, but it's America's #1 sports book. Right now, we have something a little different for you because now till September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon at a market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, which you can cancel at any time. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook. Again, FanDuel.com/lockedon. All right, cruising on here into the final segment for Locked On UCLA. We're going back to the hardwood where we're talking UCLA women's basketball. Nothing too crazy. Talking about their non-conference home schedule, which I think is pretty good. Their home schedule should be pretty good, right? Just the fact that UCLA USC, both in the Galen Center and Paul Pavilion, is much-watched TV this year. Teams that are 2 of the top 5 teams of the country. Those are 2 games in the Los Angeles area that should dominate the college basketball discussion. Not just the women, but the college basketball discussion. And probably, I hope, sell out again because they sold out both sides of things. It should be an elite matchup with Juju on the other side and UCLA's talent brought back by Corey Close with more transfer talent. Now, what does the non-conference home schedule look like at the moment? UCLA, Colgate, Pepperdine, they get a Cal Poly in there, but some of the highlights include the return home games of both Arkansas and South Carolina. South Carolina, it's from a couple of seasons ago when they went to Columbia, and then Arkansas was last year coming over to UCLA. Now, the Bruins did go to Ohio State last year, but now Big Ten members, it's a little tougher in college basketball because you expect to play every team generally once or twice, and the schedules do look a little different on the men's and the women's side between the 20 to the 18 game schedule. However, they're not going to go do it like you can in football, a pre-scheduled non-conference game turned into a conference game with conference realignment is not so easy to keep on the schedule. And I know in other sports, some teams like in baseball or softball, they'll go play a team in a non-conference game or a little series and to boost the RPI. But basketball, it just doesn't always make the most sense. So they're not going to go play Ohio State or everything at home. They do get the premier game in the likes of this early part of the season, Arkansas, and then South Carolina, November 24th, right? I think that's cooking around or right before, I don't have it at the top of my head, Thanksgiving, right around Thanksgiving, where the Bruins host South Carolina and should have their first sellout of the season. Not that they won't have it already, not that they won't play in front of crazy crowds. They're already going to play and open the season in Paris, France. Then you've got all sorts of fun events this year, Big Ten play, but the non-conference home schedule with Colgate, Pepperdine, Arkansas, South Carolina, which we already knew, but South Carolina, November 24th, is an elite must-watch game. In Arkansas, that's no slouch of a game. That was a big win for UCLA last year to go dominate them in Fayetteville. So the team is going to have an elite schedule, top to bottom. Last year, they handled it with a lot of resolve, even though Betts was out for a little bit with, being a bit banged up, undisclosed out of the lineup. But UCLA's got talent. They've got Charlize Ledger-Walker, who's coming off the ACL injury. They've got Gardner. They've got a team that is looking better and better with arguably 3 5-star products coming in to this team with already the talent coming over from last year's team. The excitement is there. The schedule is there. And I think all the eyes are going to be on USC, while UCLA is going to somehow, I think, slide under the radar again and be a top 5, and should be this year, hopefully, a top 4 seed that gets past the Sweet 16 and should hopefully make it to a Final Four. Not just an Elite 8, bigger and better goals. Get to that third weekend and make UCLA's first Final Four in the NCAA era of women's basketball a reality. Okay, we'll dive in deeper with more Locked On UCLA episodes. But until then, get your hands up, Bruins fans. 8 clap time, baby. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. UCLA. UCLA fight, fight, fight. This has been Locked On UCLA. Zach signing off. Go Bruins.